So we're here today with Leilani Martinez. She's had this unbelievable career so far, and she works for the government. And we are really excited to have her on today. Let's start with your work at USAgov. Tell us what you do there and what you've been doing the last few years.
Thank you so much, Jose, for having me here. It's a pleasure to tell you a little bit more about my career, how I started in public service, how passionate I feel about the work that I do. So I work in USAgov, and I don't know if people are familiar with the program or not, but in a nutshell, USAgov is the official website of the U.S. government. So we are the front door to the federal government. And what that means is that our mission is to make it easy for people to navigate the government space. So as you know, and as you can imagine, government, it's complicated. It's really hard sometimes to get the information. It's hard to connect to the right resource, the right program, the right service. So we help people navigate the government space. And we have two websites, USA.gov and USA.gov in Espanol. And basically, we aggregate information from across the government, making it easier for people to find what they need. So if someone needs information around housing benefits, or health-related information, they can start with USA.gov, their search, until they can get to the right resource.
So that seems like an insanely broad website to navigate and to even think about how to get started. The United States government is huge. The country's huge. There are thousands of programs. There are thousands of connections to private industry, to nonprofit industry. How do you even start to think about how to organize all of that information into a place that makes sense, that is easy to navigate, and that actually is useful for people and that they're not confused?
Right. That is the challenge, but the opportunity as well, right? It's like all this ecosystem. How do we simplify it so people can actually find what they need? So basically, that's our mission. That's what we do on a daily basis. So there are many, many things that we do. We do obviously a lot of research, but we look at a lot of data. We have an immensely amount of data that we have access to. And part of our jobs actually on the content is look at this data coming from many different sources. So we look at quantitative data, qualitative data to kind of understand what's on people's minds. What do they really need? How are they looking for this information, right? How are they thinking in terms of government programs and services? Because many times in government, we might call things a certain way, but that's not how people are searching for the information. So if you go to USA.gov, for example, it's very simple. You get to our homepage, you see a list of topics: health, consumer protection. You will see housing, consumer credit, etc., immigration-related information. So we use the words that people really search for on our site to try to get the information about the programs and services, right? How are they looking for the information? What are they looking for? And how do they behave, right? Once they come to our site. So we take that all into account and we organize things by topics. And then we make sure that everything is in plain language and very simple for them to access.
So tell me about how that has changed, if it has at all, in the last couple of years. This year has changed all of our lives all over the world. And I'd love to understand how the government's main website has changed anything about it in order to facilitate that search intent. How did USAgov amend their website or maybe their messaging itself?
So USAgov plays a really unique role during times of emergency. So Department of Homeland Security designates USAgov as the official lane of communication to the public during times of emergency. So in the past, we have played a really critical role during hurricanes response, for example. So during Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Harvey, we were really the source of information the public will come to get all kinds of information about services and programs around a specific disaster, right? Because our role is to really aggregate information from across the government. We've also played a critical role this year. So we have spent a lot of time this year analyzing what people were looking for, search terms, and it's been really interesting to see how it has changed from the beginning of the year until now, latter part of 2020. At the beginning of the year, people were asking questions around, what is COVID-19? What are the symptoms, et cetera. We were working with the different agencies to put out that information on our site. Then a lot of the questions were around stimulus checks and stimulus payments. So we're putting information out there around that as well. Now, a lot of the questions are around voting and elections, right? So we're putting content on our site or updating the content on our site around that topic. So we're constantly kind of checking the pulse of the people around what they're looking for around a specific topic, and adjusting and updating the content and working with other agencies to make sure we have the most relevant content on our site.
Before we get into how you eventually got to this position, I'd love to know a bit of the day-to-day, because I'm personally interested in staffing for a website. The mind boggles to think about how many people are involved in creating the USAgov website. How many people are you in touch with on a day-to-day basis? And how many people are stakeholders in, obviously, I'd say even like the whole American public is the stakeholder, right?
Right.
But like how many people are actually involved in creating this?
Wonderful question. We're a small and mighty team. So I oversee the content and outreach team. I have 4.5 federal employees working on the team. And I want to make sure that I stress that it is a bilingual platform. So I have people working both English and Spanish language content. So I have 4.5 federal employees, and then I have several contractors supporting the effort, but it's not more than 11 people working on both the content and outreach side of the house. USAgov as a program it's bigger than that. In addition to the content and outreach division, which is the one I oversee, we have the customer experience division, also small group of people, awesome group of people, and they are in charge of the analytics and the user experience side of the house. And then we have web operations and the contact center. Also not a large team, but they are definitely in charge of the infrastructure backend and making sure contact center operations is in place. But people that I interact with on a daily basis, around 11 to 12 people in the team.
That's really interesting. So let's get into how you got to where you've been. I want to go through a quick summary of your career and how you ended up here. And then we can get to TTS. With TTS is the Technology Transformation Services organization inside the U.S. government, which, as they state on their site, it applies modern tech to improve the lives of the public and public servants, right? So trying to improve methodologies, trying to make it better using the latest tech. So let's go through it, and then we can get into how you got involved with TTS.
Sure. So I am a proud Boricua. I was born in Puerto Rico, and I grew up there until I was 16, and I moved to the mainland to come to college. And I went to college in New Orleans, Tulane University. And it's interesting because nowadays I hear people doing university and college tours. That was not an option for me. My mom told me, you really want to go to the mainland? Okay. Wherever you get a little more financial aid support, that's where you go. Never seen any of these colleges. I ended up in Tulane, New Orleans, never been to that city before. And I knew, okay, if I need to make it work, I need to love the city for 4 years. And I did a degree in French literature, and a minor in psychology. After 4 years, I wasn't sure where exactly I was heading. I went back to Puerto Rico to kind of reset and figure out what my next step will be. And that's when I decided I wanted to do an MBA. I was always interested in kind of in the international side of things. And I've always loved marketing and outreach. And I'm like, well, with the languages, French, Spanish, maybe there's something there. So I applied to different schools, and I ended up in DC, George Washington University, and I did an MBA in International Business and Marketing. I have to say it was challenging coming from kind of a different background. Coming from humanities, I love languages. Go to a business school, it was quite a shock for me, but I'm glad that I found some good people along the way to help me kind of guide my steps, something that I would recommend everyone to do throughout your career. I love the city of DC. I saw a lot of potential. I love kind of in the international flavor of the city. So I stayed. I never thought I was going to stay for so long, but I stayed for a while. I ended up at the World Bank working for a few years as a consultant. And what really kind of got me going kind of in the technology space was my first big project at the World Bank. I was involved in the first kind of attempt the World Bank had to do some online forums or online discussions with Latin America, and it was around environment topics. And I was involved in the translation of the materials, but also setting up the technology behind it. I didn't know much about it, but I'm like, sure, I can do this. And I love how we were using technology to bring people together. And then from there, I ended up in the gender division at the World Bank, and I was involved in the redesign of their gender database. And that's when I started getting this thing, esta cosita que I love this. I think there's something here. And I remember seeing one day this announcement that the US government was going to launch the portal in Spanish, the official web portal of the US government in Spanish. So I was like, I have to do this. This is very awesome. And I was just very daring. I sent an email to a contact. I'm like, I am interested. Can I learn more? Right? And that's how everything started. And it was a 1-year opportunity. I'm like, okay, good enough. I can learn a lot and contribute to this.
And what year was this?
2003.
Okay.
2003. That's when USAgov en Español, what is now known as USAgov en Español, was launched. It was launched as First Gov en Español. A year later, have become, 17 years later? Obviously, my role has evolved over time, but that's how kind of things started. And I have to say, it's been awesome seeing that program evolved over time, and really adapting, right, to the changes in the population, serving that core community that really needs government information and services. But so that's how I ended up in TTS, and even within TTS, I've played different roles within the organization. But my heart really always has been with the work that we do that has a direct impact to the public. So I've done different things within TTS, and then I came back to USAgov because that's something that I feel passionate about.
So tell me about the connection between TTS and USAgov. When did you find out about TTS? When did TTS become a part of your life? And how did TTS help you in your career at this government institution?
So USAgov is part of TTS. We're under the Technology Transformation Services Organization. When I started with what is now known as the Public Experience Portfolio, or USAgov, things looked a little different, the structure. The program has evolved and the structure has become bigger, right? And now there's many programs under TTS. There's 18F, there's solutions, and our program is under the solutions side of things within TTS. But we've always had the same mission, right? We've always had the same desire to serve the public and to use technology to transform and modernize government and to really improve, right, how we are delivering services to the public. I think it's very awesome nowadays, right? Because there's so much potential within TTS. There's so many opportunities in our organization to really make a change and be part of something bigger. What I love about the job and our program and TTS is that we can touch the rest of government. We can really collaborate with the rest of government. So yes, I'm very much, of course, in tune with USA.gov, the site, etc. But we don't do any of that in isolation. And that applies to many, and I think all the programs within TTS, right? We are seen as the leaders and people that can really improve and collaborate with other groups in other federal agencies to do a lot of this work. And I think that's the exciting part of TTS. That you really get a sense of what's happening across the government, and you can really influence and have an impact on how other government services or other government programs are doing their work. And that's pretty awesome.
That's great, Leilani. Could you give me an example of how people could make that sort of a difference? Are there some anecdotes over the last few years of how having somebody, perhaps even a Latinx person in those positions, can make an appreciable difference in the government through TTS? I'd love some awesome examples if you have them.
Yeah, one of the most amazing moments for me in my career, I have to say, was in 2017. I know I mentioned the role that USAgov plays during times of emergency. 2017 was also a challenging time in the history of this country in terms of all the hurricanes, right? That unfortunately we had to deal with. It was Irma, Harvey, and Maria. And I have to say that it came full circle for me. 2017, Hurricane Maria was really devastating for Puerto Rico. And we did so much work during Hurricane Maria. So DHS, Department of Homeland Security, designated USAgov once again as the official lane of communication to the public in 2017. We did a lot of work translating materials into Spanish, but I'm talking, this was 24/7. We were leveraging contacts in Puerto Rico to ensure people were getting some sort of communication. I mean, if you can remember, people had no way to connect with others. It was amazing to see how we were coming together in our team to figure out creative ways to get information about government programs, government services, basic information to let people know, hey, there's something here you can apply to, or be careful about X, Y, and Z. This is what's happening in your area. We were coming up with like creative ways on social media, doing short PSAs, etc., that people didn't even have to click on links so they could get information right away. The whole team came together to do this, but I have to say that it really made a difference having bilingual, bicultural employees in the team. For me, it became a very personal work, right? Because my family is still in the island. So for me, it was work, but it's also, it's my family, it's my friends I'm trying to also help here. But also it provided many of us that connection when work and something that personal that you care so much about comes together. And having the background, having kind of that cultural sensitivity was really key. You know, there were many times that we were even advising others about certain messages. This is, let's be cultural sensitive here. Let's make sure that we're being empathetic. Let's make sure we're taking into account some of these cultural nuances. And that is important to have in a team, especially when you're dealing situations of emergency or disaster, and that you want to make sure that we're being very sensitive. The communication was really, I thought was one of the most proudest, most difficult, but one of the moments that really marked my career.
Could you explain just briefly, if you can, you mentioned the question of sensitivity. Like, what's one example of something that was molded into something that was more culturally acceptable for that audience?
I mean, that's something actually that we take into account all the time, right? Yes, Hurricane Maria is definitely an example. It was an extreme, right? Because it's a time of emergency. Mm-hmm. But we do that all the time with our messaging through all our digital channels and even through our contact center. But when it comes, for example, USAgov en Español, our Spanish language audience, one thing that I should mention, we don't do a mirror translation. USAgov en Español is not just word by word translation. We take into account the culture of the audience that we serve. And USAgov en Español is mostly for Spanish dominant Latinx, right? Latinos and Latinas. So we are constantly doing the research and understanding how do we present this information so it makes sense for this culture, or at times, do we need to explain a little bit more? So sometimes some topics in English, example, education-related information. In English, we tend to be more straightforward, more concise, the resources A, B, and C. In Spanish, we've come to realize that we have to explain more. There are people that maybe have been here a year or less. They don't even understand how the education system works in the United States, right? So we have to explain a little bit more, provide more context and background information around certain topics, because we want to make sure that before they go and start reading about resources or programs, et cetera, they have kind of a better understanding of how the system works in this country. So we do that all the time. We also want to take into account what's happening in the country. So you will see, for example, if you look at our social media channels, that we're very much in tune with the world, right? With the country. If there's tragic events happening in the country, we're very careful what we're putting out there on social media. We are more somber. We respect a lot what's happening in the country at a given time. So all those things we're constantly evaluating and assessing.
Could you give a sense of the type of support that a potential applicant will receive, or maybe once, if they get hired, if they get chosen to be a part of this, what kind of support does TTS provide its fellows, it's the people that are working there? What does it look like on a day-to-day basis? Because I think a lot of people that are considering this option in their careers, they don't want to just be placed and then kind of left alone. I'd love to know the role of TTS leadership in helping develop these careers.
You're going to find people that are extremely committed and passionate about the work we do. I say that the best asset that we have are the people, the hearts and the minds. Super smart people, very committed, even in moments where we might be dealing with a lot, right? I always say, let's remember why we're here. We're here to serve the people, to serve the public. And that for me has kept me going for 17 years, because I am very proud that the fact that every day I can have a direct impact on someone's life. So when you get here, you're going to feel very supported. People are going to want you to succeed. Because if you succeed, we all succeed. It is definitely a team effort. I know with my team, I'm very proud of everything that we do. We're very supportive. We're very collaborative. We want people to grow and to evolve. Like I said, I started as the manager or point of contact of USAgov en Español 17 years ago. I'm now the director of the Content and Outreach Division of USAgov. So there's a lot of potential. I think I'm an example of that. There's a lot of potential to really grow, to really explore many different opportunities. I think it's also really exciting because, which is a challenge in the work that we do, but it's also very exciting because in addition to the regular kind of O&M and the day-to-day work that you have to do, you're constantly thinking, okay, what else? What's coming? What are the trends? We're thinking a lot of voice search technology. So it gives you the opportunity to really be exposed to different things, but also to constantly challenge yourself, right? Like, what else? What else can I propose? Is there something else here that we should be exploring? In addition to doing your day-to-day work, because at the end of the day, we have products that we have to maintain. We have products that we want to grow, but we're not stagnant. We're not just stuck. And you're going to get all that kind of support because we're all kind of feeling that same thing, that we all need to move forward together. And there's different groups. We have guilds within TTS. So in addition to being in a particular group, right, your organizational structure, you have to be in a team, etc. There's opportunity to actually interact with people outside of your team. So if you're interested in research techniques, etc., there's a guild group that work on that, and you can be part of that kind of unofficially. But that's when people from across TTS who have an interest in research related topics, they get together on a regular basis. If you're interested in the topic of content, you can get together with people from across TTS. So there's opportunity constantly to learn.
Should somebody think about, or should they consider their own technical skills when applying to TTS? or how should they think about their technology skills? For example, if say I've worked at Google for 4 or 5 years and I've worked developing the latest aspect of the search engine or advertising or something like that, and then I want to get into this program to help out the government and help the general public. How do I think about my technology skills within the frame set by TTS? Should I think about it that I can bring in that experience and how they develop inside once they go in?
Yeah, great question. Actually, I want to add something once I answer your question, something that made me think of that. I think it's definitely a hybrid approach. I think people should come to the government with an open mind, right? With also the curiosity of learning how government works and how it is that these public servants are doing all this stuff. But I also definitely, that's the whole beauty of bringing people from the outside as well, is to bring all that knowledge, all that background, all that experience, and contributing and adding that to the mix. I think that's that's the winning formula when we're able to do that as well. But I think it's important to bring both things together. I do want to say, because I am not really a technologist, and I also want to throw that out there, that there's many skills that are needed in TTS. Yes, engineers, developers, but people who do really awesome research. We want to hear from you. Content strategists. We want to know who you are. Data scientists are really important as well. There's a lot of skills that are needed in TTS. So I really want to encourage people to explore all the different possibilities within the organization, because we have all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of experiences and many different journeys. And we're all here. And I think that's part of kind of the beauty when we talk about diversity as well, in addition to backgrounds and ethnicities and languages and many other things. I think having that combination of backgrounds, it's really what brings the best out of the team. In my team, I have journalists. I have, we have in USAgov, we have librarians. We have, developers, engineers, and accessibility experts, et cetera. We have all those people working on USAgov. And I think that's kind of the beauty, because we all bring our kind of our strength, our backgrounds into the mix, and different perspective, which I think is really important.
Awesome, Leilani. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you think that's really important that we have not talked about your experience at TTS or about TTS itself that you think people that are considering applying should know about?
Sure. I mean, I guess the main thing that I want to reiterate is the importance of having people from different backgrounds be part of TTS. It's important that we as an organization represent the public that we serve, that when we look within, we're also seeing a reflection of our society, right, of our nation. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here as well, because for me, it's really important. As I am very proud of the work that we do, all the products, all the services that we offer. And I know we're just going to get better if we get people from different backgrounds, more Latinx coming on TTS, and really bringing their perspectives and their all the experiences, all their journeys into our mix. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much. And for anybody that is thinking about applying, we will have the information available on the main techqueria.org site. Thank you so much, Leilani.
Thank you so much.